Welcome to Your 2 Cents, the podcast, brought to you by Credit Unions in partnership with Canadian Content Studios. I'm Jonathan Torrens. You know, money and mental health are more intertwined than most of us probably even realize, because it goes both ways. Money woes might be impacting your overall mental health, but money can also feel like a barrier to getting the proper help you need. On this episode, Alicia and Sylvia sit down with Martina Kelades, a mental health advocate and speaker who knows from experience, both personally and professionally, the importance of having just the right resources. Martina will share some of those resources that you can access that won't break the bank, and she'll also share some tools you can gather for if the need ever arises. Here now is that conversation.
Mental health is a topic that thankfully has become less and less taboo over the years to talk about, but still impacts millions of Canadians every single year. Mental health resources are still expensive and difficult in some cases to access, making it hard for people without the means to get it when they need it the most.
Our guest today is Martina Kelades. She owns Life Out Loud, a Black-owned business centered around mental health promotion. She's a mental health speaker who finds her passion helping people develop their own personal narratives as a way of encouraging connection, growth, resiliency, and overall mental wellness. So hello, Martina.
Hello, ladies. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so grateful that you're here with us.
Absolutely. We can't wait to get into this. This is such an important topic. And like I said earlier, we're so thankful that you're the one coming to talk to us about it. So thanks for making the time.
Well, thank you for inviting me to the show. Like, this is, truly an honor. So,
So this is a big topic.
mm-hmm.
Mental health is thankfully becoming something that we're being a little bit more open and talking about, but we definitely have a long way to go to help normalize mental health as a part of overall health. What made you want to pursue this as a career for yourself?
Well, I will start off by saying I really didn't have any true intentions of being an entrepreneur first. And I never thought in a million years that I would have a business that's based on mental health and being vulnerable and being open. So my business, my career in the mental health field in this space actually was the outcome of mental health challenges that I've had over the years. So those challenges included burnout. I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, as well as depression back in I think it was like late 2018, 2019. So those challenges actually ended my 10-year career as a personal development counselor and facilitator. So no intention, but it was just kind of happenstance. This is the beauty of life. You know, it just takes us on all these different journeys. So as a personal development counselor and facilitator, I worked with clients daily who often had various mental health challenges. And while I was, serving the clients and doing the work, I also co-founded a mental health organization. I, was working with children in emergency care situation, children and youth. I was doing all these things and working way too much, and come to realize that my work patterns and behaviors and the way that I was kind of overscheduling myself was a result or a symptom of numbing and avoiding some personal and some, I guess, deep-rooted trauma that I hadn't actually addressed or resolved. So through therapy, I kind of learned about how that was kind of manifesting in my life. But so for the last 3 years of my career, I was actually on a decline. And I'm super, super grateful for my employer, my CEO and manager, who actually noticed my well-being deteriorating and had several conversations with me about my mental health and well-being. And so when I was put off work on medical leave in 2019, I didn't return to that position, but I felt like I needed to use my story and my experiences to bring to awareness and of the importance of talking about our mental health. and also like to be a conduit for other businesses and organizations to hold safe spaces to have these conversations, because I recognize that it's not a common thing for employers to be like, let's talk about your mental health and not the product. Like, your work is great, but we want to make sure that you are great. Like, that's not a common conversation, I don't think, in workplaces. So that's why I was like, I feel like I have a responsibility to kind of lead the way and disrupt how employers and organizations, um, talk about these things in the workplace, and it's important to do that. So that my business actually launched in 2020. Cue the pandemic. Being a mental health business, my business skyrocketed, which was great, but also I was still in a recovery phase of burnout and was still trying to work through that and manage that and be aware of my own symptoms. But fortunately, the clients that hired me to present to their organizations allowed me to be transparent and to also like, you know, I'm struggling right now with burnout. Let's have a conversation about it. So they allowed me to bring that discussion to their workplaces, well, virtually, I suppose, and it's just kind of taken off from there. And yeah, I'm just extremely grateful that my path has kind of gone this direction.
I find it interesting that you mentioned that employers don't have this conversation because I think I come from a background of working for a company for 8 years of my life, um, devoting 14-hour days sometimes to this business. And it was always about productivity and never about mental health.
Mm.
And it was never about how my mental health might be actually impacting my productivity, and how my mental health deteriorating might have something to do with my lack of work-life balance due
Mhm.
to my job. And I think it's interesting to like hear you talk about how that's not a conversation that's had, because these things are all intertwined.
Mhm.
And I ended up losing my job not to do with my productivity. My club itself closed, and I think it was probably the cleanest way that an ending was going to happen, because I definitely was very tapped out. But in my experience with my body and my experience with like my work, no, at no point has anybody ever stopped me and said like, hey, how are you doing? Like,
Mhm.
how are you feeling? Do you like what you're doing in the gym? Do you like how you're moving your body? Do you like your job that you're doing? Like, how are you doing? And it's always been, well, you're not seeing results, whether that was my body changing or that was in my job. It was never, why are we not seeing results and what could we do? So it
Mm.
makes me super happy to hear you using your personal experience to really talk about that and being transparent, because I know that there are so many people out there working in jobs that they feel they're not fulfilled in, when realistically they're struggling with their mental health. And when they finally get the resources and the support that they need for that, they can quite literally do anything. And I think that that's such an important conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to your point, I thought I was kind of like losing interest in my job. I didn't realize it was related to my health. And so like the organization actually created a new position for me as like a corporate trainer. So I thought that was the answer, but it certainly wasn't, especially being a new position. Like there's so many things you have to build and create and do. Um, but then when it came time to, actually looking at the root cause, yeah, it was transformative really for me, and also an opportunity for me to look inward, because I'm constantly like serving clients and, questioning certain behaviors and why they do things like that. But on the inside, I was struggling, but didn't feel I had the courage to even like talk to someone else, right? And so when I was off work, um, I really felt a loss of purpose. My work was like a huge part of my identity, who I was. And then when that was gone, then I was like, what is my purpose anymore? Like what am I even going to do? No one's going to hire someone who's broken. Like all these things started to flood my mind. But then I started to get back into writing again, which I absolutely love to do. And I wrote a blog called Burnout Not Broken. And from that, people, strangers around the world emailed me and said, your message really resonated with me. I'm also struggling with how to balance work and life, and talking about my emotions. And so that's kind of like how I was like, okay, how do we build a business from these experiences? And, since being open about my own journey, it's been, so transformative. The power of vulnerability is so real and so strong. And I think it's the connection part that really makes the difference. When I hear someone's story, it really connects me to them, and then helps me to look inward on myself and know that I'm not alone. And I think that's ultimately what I'm trying to do through my work.
It's really amazing because you just hit the nail on the head of something that I was thinking about too, which is being vulnerable is truly one of the hardest things I think someone can do. And when you're not feeling okay, whether it's in your work life or your home life, or a combination of both, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be just one or the other. What do you do? And so in my experience, I started going to therapy when I was 12. I was really embarrassed about it. There was some home life stuff going on that led that to be what I was doing. Only one friend of mine knew about it, and I told everyone else that I had a weekly music lesson, or however often I was going. I can't really remember the frequency at that point. So it was so shameful at the time to be a 12-year-old in therapy. And then over the years, I've turned to therapy many, many times. And it's always for me been the missing piece of the puzzle. If I feel like I can't quite get there myself, I go back, and it's always armed me with the right tools, or just like that look at you to go, okay, like you think it's all of this, but it's actually this, kind of connecting that you're asking everyone else questions except yourself sort of pieces. But what advice can you give to people who have never been to therapy and might be hesitant? Because it can, even when I've re-entered therapy at times, it can feel really terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. First thing I would say is that you are not alone. You are not alone, Sylvia, in your feelings around like going to therapy and just kind of wanting to be hidden, uh, because it's so. I mean, it's so funny, and I talk about these things all the time. But even as a personal development professional who so strongly believed in therapy, and who would often send clients and refer them to community resources and therapeutic services, when it was time for me to face the woman in the mirror and to book my first therapy session, I carried so much shame and embarrassment. And I knew it was something that I needed to do for myself, but for some reason I was really kind of weighed down by feelings of judgment, and even who would see me. I would love going to therapy um, on rainy days, a day such as this, because that meant I could put my hood up, I could wear or put my umbrella up, I could walk in and be in disguise. And so I did that for like the longest time, like would just kind of look around. Like my therapist was downtown Halifax, and I was just so many times like cars would drive by, and I'm like, I wonder if they know me or see me walking into this. And it was like I look back on that experience and I give myself compassion, because you know I was someone who was in a vulnerable place and really trying to find the courage to give myself what I needed to receive, in my healing journey. Um, but I would just say, like, for people, it's not an uncommon feeling. It's very normal for people to feel that way. Now I dance going into therapy. It's like, look at me, I'm going to therapy. Like, I have no shame, because I think we all need help, and I think therapy can help every single one of us. When I was off work, I was in a really deep depression. I was like in the bottom of a really dark well, and I felt like I don't even know how I'm going to get out of this. And I came across the Brene Brown, The Power of Vulnerability TED Talk,
Yes.
and she had talked about how she sees a therapist. And I thought, what in the world is going on? Like, this is a well-educated woman. She is a shame researcher. She's a storyteller, a beautiful storyteller, all these things. she sees a therapist? Because she was talking about how she sees a therapist. Her therapist sees therapists, basically. And it clicked for me because I thought, my gosh, there's a therapist that sees other therapists. So why would I believe that I'm not worthy to have that safe space? Like, even it doesn't matter your background, like it's something that is it. I mean, it should be available for everyone. I know it's not. That's a whole nother conversation, but or accessible, I should say. But it was in that moment that I thought, you know what, you too deserve to be seen in this space and to be supported in that way. But I would also say to people too, because sometimes, some people have said to me, well, I've tried therapy and it didn't work. I would encourage people to try again, and if that didn't work, try it again, because sometimes you have to go through maybe one or two therapists to find one that really connects or you feel connected with, because that's extremely important. But yeah.
It's like dating. Why on earth do people think that the first therapist they're going to walk in to see is going to instantly connect with them? I had a massage the other day, and I walked in, and instantly I was like, this will be the only time I see this person. And that's just for a massage. I didn't have to tell her anything. So, like, why we think that we are going to connect with that person who you're going to spill your heart out to, I think that's the hardest thing. It feels like failure when I think it's actually more connection driven than failure. But then
Yeah.
to feel like that and then have to try again, I've
Mhm.
certainly, like, the therapist I have now, it was an instant connection and I could feel it, and it
Yeah.
was beautiful. But I've also felt the feeling where I've walked in there and I'm like, absolutely not, which is so hard to then go, okay, fine, I'm going to try that again. I get how
Mhm.
people could feel defeated, but I don't think it's an instant connection every time.
No, no, and I mean, fortunately for me, well, the first. This mine's a funny story. The first therapist I've seen, I went for couples counseling, and then we didn't see each other, and then I found another one in the same clinic, and we connected so well. And then during the pandemic, she actually moved to Ontario, so that relationship ended, and I was devastated. But I went back to the first one, and it was just kind of like I was in a different process of healing, and so it made sense at that time. And so, yeah, so it's a journey, even that. And I would encourage people to even shop around, like. Google is a great resource to kind of find like different therapists and what their specialties are. Ask people. I've referred a friend to my therapist, and she loves her. And sometimes when we're like getting together, she's like, you know what Susie mentioned that was really. I was like, oh, oh yeah,
Our friend
our
Susie.
therapist. Yeah.
For me, I don't see a therapist on a regular basis. And the few times that I have seen a therapist, I've almost used it as a things are really bad. I need to talk to somebody. And then it's a one and done type of experience. Um, I like to think I'm a really receptive human being. I believe in therapy, and each conversation that I've had has been beneficial to me. But I haven't taken the time to actually find myself someone. Now I'm ready for it. I want to be doing it. I'm not hesitant about it, or at least I don't think I'm hesitant about it. A therapist might tell me that I am procrastinating it, though. That could be what comes with it. But when choosing a therapist from your experience, Sylvia, because y'all have both spoken to someone or are speaking to someone, what do you think I should be looking for, or what type of feelings should I feel when I'm having a conversation with my therapist?
That's a really great question. I don't know if I have the answer in terms of like what you might be feeling. I think a lot of times people feel the fear of being judged. I think when we go into those spaces, sometimes it may not be like super deep rooted issues. It could be, something like, how do I balance, life and work? Or sometimes it's, bringing previous trauma that you've never even spoken to anyone. So I would just say, whatever you're feeling is valid. it's there for a reason, and it's there to teach us something. And I would take that with you into the session and just be open and transparent. It's like, I feel safe in here, but I feel like maybe I'm not ready to share everything. Because that's what I said to my therapist the first time. I was like, I've had some stuff, and then she kind of explored it, and I was like, I'm not talking about this right now. And that was okay. And then we did some other work, and then eventually I just let it all out. So, but whatever you're feeling is certainly valid, and it's your body, your emotions are telling you something. And it oftentimes, I think, in this day and age, especially where there's so many distractions, I think we numb a lot of those uncomfortable feelings, or those feelings that we just don't even want to see. But just let it be, let it exist, and use that as an opportunity for reflection and growth. I don't know if that answered your question. But
No, but it's interesting because I was going to say, like, for me, some of it is really superficial. So, like, I started going to therapy before online therapy was available. So I didn't have the choice to like be in my own comfortable space. So part of it was like, am I happy in this space? Can that be the first thing that's giving me peace? Does it feel physically like a space that I feel comfortable being in? Because for me, that's a big thing. Like, I really strive for like calm, relaxing spaces. So if I went into a place that was like not giving me good vibes, that didn't start things off well, because I didn't feel not physically unsafe. I wasn't walking into like dangerous situations, but it just wasn't giving me that peace of mind that was calming that part of my brain that could allow other parts of my brain to open. And then I think Martina hit the nail on the head. I've had the same experience too, where I was like, I'm not ready to talk about that right now. So having someone who, when you say that, their reaction is, okay, great, then let's find another thing to talk about, rather than dismiss those feelings and pushing you too hard. Because when you're getting to know a therapist, my experience is they don't know anything about you. They're only getting what you're giving them. They can certainly read your energy and all kinds of other things. But I think if my therapist, when she was leading me into that and I wasn't ready, I would have probably walked away, because it would have felt like such a judgment on why I'm not ready to share, versus going, okay, that's totally fine. So I have the same experience as Martina, where it's like, that being said, they're also there to help you grow. But I think in the ways that allow you to build a foundation of exploration and trust to go, okay, I'm ready to share that now. And sometimes it's just come out of me, like not even intentionally, like, okay, today's the day. It's like, like there it is. And I'm like, well, I guess we're doing it because I started it. So I think giving the ability to like let someone word vomit when they're ready is really important. And just a vibe.
I think I'm terrified of being the person that's the opposite of that. I think I'm terrified of being the person that's like, okay, 33 years, here it all is. Like, best of luck, do your job. Like, let's figure this out together. And I think for me, it's like, I'm not scared of that. Like, I genuinely do feel like I do a really good job of like reflecting on why I am the way that I am. However, I'm at a completely different point in my life right now with like how I'm balancing social media and being, vulnerable online and sharing my life and the crappy parts that have come along with that. So my mental health, although I feel is flourishing in most areas, there's a part of it that I need support with. And that's kind of my recovery and my like protection of myself, and just like making myself feel like the crappy things that I do go through are worth what I'm doing, and, reflecting on them so that I don't take them personally. So I definitely think I'm ready for it. I'm definitely going to take your advice, Martina, to like shop around, because I would like this to be something that's like consistent for me. And obviously with my schedule and how hectic things can be, I likely will need somebody that is, online and flexible. But yeah, I'm definitely going to take that advice to like shop around and just to like feel my feels and have somebody that kind of respects that when I'm in the space.
yeah, I will send you my therapist here in Halifax.
Yeah.
And she does virtual. Yeah, I've just kept it virtual, but she's fabulous. I've also worked with her in person as well. But
Amazing.
you know what, this is just a side note, but both of my therapists have had or have nose rings. The one that moved away and the one that I have now, both have nose rings. And it's the weirdest thing, because it's like, not that I trust them more because they have a nose ring, but it's just kind of like I had to ask myself this question, like, why do you feel comfortable because they have a nose ring? I have a nose ring. I've worn one, but sometimes I think we have this kind of um, like perception about what a therapist should look like or represent. And so for me, it's never been a therapist having a nose ring. Like there's certain things like when I see a therapist with a tattoo, I'm like, okay, I think we're cool. Like it's
Yeah.
maybe
It's
I don't
seeing
know.
yourself. It's like almost like it feels like more of a safer space when you have somebody that's thought about those same things that you have and made those same decisions that you have. I feel too like with a tattoo and a nose ring, like that was so taboo to get. Like at one time, at one point, like those were like taboo things to have. I definitely think seeing yourself for sure is
Mhm.
something that is like super super valid.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's very important. But yeah, I'll send you my contacts. And that's like and to add to that, like even for myself as a Black woman, the options for Black therapists in Halifax is very slim. Now, I've recently met through the Halifax Chamber, and I've worked with a new Black therapist who's new to this area. Well, I think a couple years anyway. But before that, there were very slim options, and I actually started using a different type of virtual therapy through BetterHelp.com. And part of my requirement was to have a female Black therapist because there are different cultural experiences that they also bring to to those spaces. And I've never had that before, like to talk about generational trauma with my therapist who is a white female. It may not it just it doesn't work the same, right? So uh,
100%.
for me, this has been an added benefit to having another therapist. No, I've got a couple therapists, uh, two single therapists, I've got naturopath. I have a whole squad. I need it. I am not.
I feel like we turned like just over 30 and now like instead of like, trading names of like our favorite bars, our favorite club, like it's like, no, this is my favorite therapist. Like
Yeah,
this is my dentist. Like
Yeah.
I feel like the trading happens in a much more professional.
that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Hey, want to know where I got this sweater? Okay, I know you can't see it, but trust me, it looks incredible on me. More importantly, it's from one of my favorite local small businesses. And one of the best parts about shopping local is that not only do I look exquisite, but I also know that for every $100 I spend, 68 of it stays local. Credit unions also love to support local businesses because for every dollar spent at them, it creates 2 to 4 times more jobs and economic benefits than if I was to shop big box. So next time you're about to shop, think local, will ya? And if you're dreaming of becoming a business owner yourself, why not take those dreams right on into a credit union? They can turn them into reality. I've seen it happen.
So one thing we've noticed coming up, obviously, it just came up in this conversation, more and more is online therapy. And for somebody like me, I think that I do require more of a virtual space. It markets itself as being more effective and doable from anywhere. What do you think are some of the advantages and disadvantages to that?
Yes, so I'm new with BetterHelp.com, and I actually learned about this platform through one of my favorite podcasts, Woman Evolve, by Sarah Jakes Roberts, um, and she is like my spiritual mentor, and so she had like this coupon code for BetterHelp, and I thought, you know what? Currently, I'm paying $210 for my therapist here in Halifax for 50 minutes because they have to have the 10 minutes right for the notes and everything. And
I have all the notes on you.
that's a common practice. But um, I've been struggling financially, especially over the last year. Um, in full transparency, my husband and of I mean, we've been together for 20 years. We separated last year. I then, found a place to live, had to start over. Um, and through that time continued my therapy. But it's, as someone has been in like a two income household now to a single income household in the midst of high costs and inflation, all these things. I'm like, I have to do something different. Like, I want to make sure I stay connected with my therapist here in Halifax, but I need I need more maintenance, and I don't know if I can afford $210 every week with something else. So when I looked into betterhelp.com, I used the coupon code and I'm like finding all of the discounts. There was one, they were like, we'll offer you this extra until August. So I'm paying $235 a month for weekly access. Uh,
Wow.
we I talk to my therapist on this online platform. She sends me worksheets to do in between our sessions. I see her weekly, but $235 for a month compared to $210 for one
A
session.
session.
Yeah. So that's been a huge advantage for me. And yeah, so for right now, as I mentioned before, like, she's a Black female therapist, and we have very similar faith perspectives, which is really good for me. One of the disadvantages that I kind of, and I don't even think it's like an issue right now, is that she is an American and she lives in Florida, and I'm a Canadian living on the east coast of Canada. Now, there's no there's no real problem, but we live in different climate, like economic climates. We live in different regions of the world. It hasn't been an issue so far. So, but that was one thing that I did kind of think about. Um, and another advantage is like being able to have therapy in the comfort of my own home. And I also like to go back to our previous question around like, how do we transition into a therapeutic space? Maybe try virtual therapy for the first couple of sessions. And when you feel like you're comfortable with that therapist, you can move into a physical or in person um, therapeutic session. Um, yeah, it's just, but there is also something to be said about um, that in-person connection too. So I think that's really important. Like, even through my own work with businesses and organizations, like, I do virtual training, but I prefer in person. Like, I prefer to be in the room with groups and telling my story and sharing resources and information. I think there's something about the energy that we bring into spaces that really helps to bring about this beautiful real time connection. So, uh, but yeah, there are definitely advantages and disadvantages. Um, but I think it's kind of how you navigate it, and understanding what it is that you need specifically for that for that time. Like, when I first started therapy, I don't know if virtual would have been um, as effective as is now. I've been in therapy for years. Like, I first went to therapy to fix my marriage, and I realized that it was me that needed some healing and fixing. And
Yeah.
so, like, but to do this virtually in my initial sessions, I don't know, it would be different. It would feel different, I think. So I'm glad that I had the in-person experiences over the years, and then I can kind of switch. I'm kind of more in like a maintenance mode of therapy. So the virtual platform works well for me right now.
I think it's interesting that you talk about like obviously needing more maintenance at a different point in your life, which is also the one point in your life where you're feeling more vulnerable and not as financially stable. And that's going to lead probably perfectly into Sylvia's next question. But I find it really disheartening because it's the truth that often those who could use the support of therapy, and I think back to the times in my life where I probably could have used it the most, are definitely the times that I would have looked at it and thought, I can't afford that. Like, that's not a manageable thing for me. However, I do think that had I have seen a therapist then, or had I have had the support back then, that I might have gotten to this point in my life a little bit quicker, or sooner. And so yeah, I thanks for sharing that and being vulnerable with us and putting that out there, because that again to what you've already said, you're not alone. There are people out there that are thinking those things, and the fact that you've gone and gotten resourceful to make sure that you still keep it a priority is like super admirable. And I think, something that a lot of people need to do. But Sylvia.
Yes, what Alicia was saying does fit perfectly into this, because
Mm-hmm.
being able to say, I need help and I don't have the resources for it, is another spiral of shame that people are entering into. Like, we're trading one hard thing and piling up onto it. Right. So I'm wondering for you, like, you've worked in this space for a long time, even before you're looking for your own resources, and now you're looking for them as a human, just needing those resources. Do you have any tips on sort of outlets or things? First of all, the BetterHelp thing is huge. To be able to go see a therapist at that cost virtually for that price is incredible. That's already stretching things so much more. But for some people, that's still cost prohibitive to them. So do you have any tips on like group therapy, podcasts that you love, resources that might help someone, maybe not in crisis, but someone who's just trying to work through some things that could use something, but aren't financially able to go into therapy yet?
That's a really good question. I hear this a lot too. I'm also a mental health first aid Canada instructor. And so when I go into businesses to facilitate this um, certificate training program, people do often say, it's so expensive, especially like when I'm in rural regions of our province. And so it's really about looking at what grassroots organizations exist in your communities. We have the Canadian Mental Health Association. We have the Mental Health Commission of Canada, which is who I collaborate with through that training program. They have a ton of resources online for businesses and for individuals. There's community mental health groups. There is also the mental health crisis line, which is specific to Nova Scotia. So it's a free, toll-free line available 24/7. 1-888-429-8167 is the number for anyone who is in crisis or is supporting someone who is in crisis. You can call that number and get support immediately, and it's a free service. Kids Helpline is another one. But there are lots of options, and I recently spoke at an event through the chamber with businesses, and I was with one of the therapists I mentioned earlier, and we were saying it would be great to have like a whole list of like free resources in our community, because I think a lot of times, especially if you are the person that's in crisis or is one who is struggling, it can seem like a lot to even open up your phone or tablet or whatever to search, like, where do you even begin, right? And I've supported so many people. I've supported loved ones and clients in accessing supports, and I can feel the weight of, just having to make a phone call to book an appointment. I felt that. I felt it for myself, and I felt it as an advocate and a support person. Um, so I would say, like, have a solid group or a person that you can like confide in, and to help you on that journey to accessing supports. You don't have to do it alone. There are so many people that are around you, just, whether it's church organizations or spiritual groups or mentors, but find someone who can be that support for you. And also, um, in my, I did this a few years ago, but I think sometimes information changes over the years, of course. But when I'm in like a healthier state of mind, sometimes I'll write down lists so that when I'm in that place of darkness, or I'm feeling, defeated, or I just don't have the energy to actually like look at certain resources or things that I've self-help resources even that I have, available to me. Sometimes I'll just make a list and then have that list handy. And so it's like, okay, why don't you tune into this podcast? Because this might help with that feeling of defeat, or that feeling of, lacking purpose, or whatever it is that I'm feeling. So, but compile a list of resources to have you can just make a note in your phone even. So it's there and it's accessible whenever you need that support. But podcasts are also a great resource. Um, YouTube videos. I love TED Talks. As a professional speaker as well, I'm just so fascinated by how people speak and how, like, the different ways they tell stories, and how the stories, resonate with my own life. And so I think, yeah, connecting through social media or other platforms with people who are like-minded, but also are, maybe can offer you something on your healing journey. That's been, the most beneficial resource for me, and it's free. You know what I mean? Like, I'm searching people on Instagram, like vulnerability speakers, or how do I live with courage and live on purpose, like all these things. And then I get messages, and then of course it creates the algorithm so that you're receiving these kind of, words of encouragements daily. So but yeah, community groups, podcasts, um, yeah, community mental health, they do have free services and free therapeutic services. But as we know, sometimes the wait list is a little bit longer than what people can, withstand. So
I I love the idea of being proactive rather than reactive. Like right now, if you're feeling really good and you've got the time, spend that time kind of building those resources so that when you're not feeling up to finding those things, you've kind of already created that for yourself. And I hate to give that as a like not a resource, but like as a
it's a reminder.
yeah, it's just one of those things that we have to start looking out for ourselves, because at the end of the day, like as we've mentioned a few times here, our bosses, our jobs, our our people might not be noticing the things that we're going through, and it's important to kind of be your own advocate in certain points. And I love the social media thing. I tell people that all of the time, Martina. It's the first thing you see when you wake up. It's the last thing you see before you go to bed. There's absolutely no reason why the things that we're looking at and scrolling through shouldn't make us feel good about ourselves and shouldn't motivate us. And I think we have, again, it's free to make those choices and to unfollow the people that aren't making us feel good about ourselves and following people who kind of add to our cup rather than empty it. So I love that feedback.
And that's key, Alicia, is that we have the choice. And I think oftentimes when we are struggling, especially with our mental health, we feel like we have lost control. When I was in that deep depressive state, I felt like I've lost control. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to. I didn't want to live. I wasn't suicidal, but I just didn't know, like, how I was going to go about my day or how I was going to live the rest of my life. It just felt really defeating. And I remember, like, I opened up my Instagram and I'm watching everyone's highlight reels. Let's watch everyone else live their best lives. And I'm sitting and laying in bed struggling. I can't even get up and shower. Like, so for me, like, when I tuned into Brene Brown and TD Jakes and, like, just really trying to find my faith again, then I started looking them up on social media, and then I just keep getting messages, and it really helped, like, as a transport to the next part to get out of that well. And so I have control in that. And I think at the end of the day, we just have to get up. We have to get up and we have to try. We have the power within us. We have the choice within us. And yes, a lot of times we might need help, but we have the ability to move out of the situation. And I always say to people, like, everyone is going to go through adversity. Everyone is going to go through challenges. We've all experienced pain. That's part of the human experience, but it's what you do with that pain. And when I was laying in that bed, and I made a decision, I made a commitment to live my life on purpose. I made a promise to myself to move into my purpose by using my pain as my purpose, using my pain as my pulpit. And that's how my business got started. And so it's not to say that I don't have off days. I certainly do, especially this last year, and going through some significant life changes, and being on my own now. And as a 38-year-old woman, I've never been single or on my own. Like, my partner and I, we started dating when I was 18. I was in university, and now I'm like 38, and like, how do I even live this life? And there's so many things that come with that, like the financial changes. And, I was in a better financial state 3 years ago, and now it's like, not in shambles, but like it's taken a hit. But also, like, I'm making a choice not to stay stuck, right? We are we are not trees. We can move, and we can move out of our situations. And I think what I'm going through right now is going to help me in my future, and it's teaching me lessons that I probably wouldn't have learned in previous situations. So
Well, thank you. That's
yeah.
amazing. The other tip that I have, because there's so many resources, I think if people can get creative, I love checking out books from the library. I think that's another huge one, because you have someone like Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle who have incredible books that for me, both their podcasts and books have been amazing resources. Go to the library. You can check them out for free. There's so many great resources there. There's also like the Libby app and all kinds of other stuff that you can check out audiobooks. And like, so if reading isn't for you, you can check out the audio version for free. So that's my other hot money saving tip on that. Yeah. But thank you. It's really vulnerable and beautiful. And this is a huge topic. It's expensive. It's personal. It's basically all of the toughest things wrapped into one. So thank you for being so beautiful with your sharing with us.
This is part of my service to my community and to myself also. But like, on the note of the books, I just finished reading Finding Me by Viola Davis. So
Oh,
as an
okay.
actor too, like, I really want to connect with other actors who share their experiences. So I took that book with me on my first solo international tour in Europe. And I'm like, this book is coming with me. And it just aligns so well, like her stories. And I'm reading this, and I'm like in random cafes in Barcelona, and just trying to like be in myself and understand myself and navigate this new journey that I'm on. But I think it's important. I mean, not everyone loves an autobiography. I get that. Like, people have different genres of books that they like to read. But in terms of like self help and really, um, you know, giving yourself that kind of space to reflect inward, I suggest looking up authors that are, telling their story. It also helps us to not feel alone on this journey as well. So I love reading people's stories. Yeah, it's
I like hearing
yeah.
people's stories too. I think it's really important. One thing we've been doing on our pod this year is we've been asking all our guests the same final questions.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a speed round. However, don't feel any pressure because there's not much speedy about Sylvia and I. So we like to try. So it's 4 questions. The first one is, what is the best thing you've ever spent money on?
Um, I would say real estate and vacations. I'm all about travel. When I was my 16-year-old self making $5.15 an hour, I would love spending money on clothes because I didn't have any responsibilities and a
Yeah.
concept of saving. But now, as a grown person, um, yeah, I'm more focused on like investments for the long term, especially as an entrepreneur. I don't have the luxury of the benefits or the pension package that I had with my previous employment. So now I'm looking at other ways of like creating a better financial future for Freedom 98. I'm hoping it's not going to be that long, but
Amazing.
you know what I mean. But
That's a great answer.
uh, I know I recognize it's also a privilege, and sometimes, especially with Europe, I had planned for that financially, but um, there's something about travel that just really gives you a different perspective on life and living, and understanding how people live differently from outside of like the little bubble that we live in on a day to day. So yeah, those.
Yeah, I say experiences because that like to switch it from the travel just to like, because I obviously, like you said, it's a privilege for us to be able to travel, but I think there's so much power in experiencing things we've never experienced before, and whatever that kind of looks like, that can be close to home or that can be far from home, but investing in those experiences, I think, is, like you said, it just opens your eyes to something that you've never done before, and takes you out of this little bubble that we live in on a pretty regular basis.
What's the worst thing you've ever spent money on?
Oh God. Debt. Definitely debt. There was a season in my life when I would spend money on stuff I did not need, like often, too much. But also through therapy, I've learned about my spending behavior, in that it was an emotional response to trauma, and it was a numbing tactic. And I remember vividly, like after work, coming, like just maybe even subconsciously, just driving into like the Winners parking lines, like, let me just go and look. And like, I'm buying all this stuff, but for what? Like, I don't even know what it is. Like, just throw it on the credit card, and then I feel better. And then, do you know what I also did? And this is why I recognize this is why I would shop at stores that would take things back, because then I would get home and then I would feel guilt for buying things that I didn't need. And then I march my butt right back to the store, take it back. But the worst things that I did buy that I didn't need, and it was becoming more frequent. And then, yeah, it is a problem. And sometimes people talk about, like, I'm having a rough day, I deserve a glass of wine, or I'm having a rough day, and do some shopping therapy or retail therapy, right? But there's something in that I think we really need to pay attention to. And that's understanding the root as to why we think those things. Like, I enjoy a glass of wine. I'm from the Annapolis Valley. We have some beautiful wine. And I enjoy shopping. I love fashion. I love putting things together. But also, I think there is a time and place for it. And understanding or asking ourselves, why am I making this purchase? Right. That's for me, that's something that I had to do, and like really be cognizant of how I'm spending my money and why I'm spending my money.
Yeah, I think there's so much power in why for like all avenues of your life, like why you're choosing to change your body, why you're choosing to
Right.
do the job you're doing, why they're choosing to surround yourself with people. Like I think that there it's a why is it seems like a little question, but can be a really impactful one.
Right.
You've been really transparent with us, but have you ever lied about how much money you have? Whether it was a lot or not a lot, have you ever lied to anybody about it?
Do you mean like how I'm a millionaire?
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
how, Alicia? Oh my gosh, that was supposed to be a secret.
I've lied on both spectrums, so, like, I think that's important to share on this, but, like, I've lied on both spectrums. I've lied when I've not had enough, and then now that my life's changed and I can afford to do a lot of things, I still find myself lying about it because I don't want the judgment that comes with either of those things, so I definitely have lied.
Yeah. Oh no, I definitely have lied as well. Also not a millionaire. I may not have it now, but
We're
I am.
Well, now
manifesting.
I'm thinking you might be lying, so maybe you are maybe you are one, Martina.
Let's just
We'll manifest it all
I'm
right now.
claiming it. I'm manifesting it. I'm
Yeah.
believing that. And a million is like, sometimes I'm like, is that even enough in this day and age? But anyway, I'm claiming that I will be able to be financially secure and do the things I enjoy, and also give back to my community and to others. Like, that day is coming. Right now, I'm in
Yeah.
transition phase financially. But yes, there have been times when I've lied about how much money I have for whatever reason. I think many of us have gotten caught up in pretending to live. This life of perceived societal status and of wealth. But for the most part, I think we've been conditioned also not to talk about our money. And I remember this conversation that it was through the credit union.
Yeah, the empowering women conversation. Yeah, through the credit unions.
Yeah, and I loved that session, and just the transparency, and women talking about their finances. But as I mentioned before, honestly, like, my finances have taken a hit over the last year, and with my partner and I separating, and me moving, and having to start over again, um, rebuilding my home, and also being in friggin' 2 car accidents. I've never been in a car accident in my
Oh,
entire
no.
life, and then I was in 2 within a month span last fall, and the second one on my way to set
Mhm.
for Trapped. um, wrote off both vehicles. My car had less than a year left, and it would have been paid off. Paid off. I wouldn't have had any payments. Um, so I had to purchase a new vehicle.
Oh,
And just like the market of finding a vehicle, like waiting forever for a new car, but also paying an absorbent amount for a used vehicle was just kind of like it took a toll. So yeah, and just the overall cost of living is higher. But again, like I said, I know this is a season of my life. I'm not where I want to be financially, but I know I'm on my way. And so I'm just trusting and believing in that, and I will rebuild my finances post this separation season starting new. So, yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that that is true at all. And you're also not alone in that either. There are so many people taking a chance and restarting something that you've built is really, really
terrifying.
gutsy and terrifying. And it's taking a gigantic leap of faith. And I think you're doing it with exceptional grace, and sharing is a really powerful thing. Going back to end this, because this is a money podcast after all, I know we've talked a lot about money different ways. Do you have a tip about money that you'd want to share with anybody?
I would say money will come back. This may sound like bizarre. So I believe that money comes back to me. I donate monthly to organizations that I believe in, and I believe in offering what I have to others. And I've just found that, it's often come back to me, like I've not gone without. But it's like a huge, huge leap of faith, But sometimes, like if I know that I can't give it, then I don't. But I think there's something powerful in sharing what resources that we have to others. Many people are struggling. I think many of us are financially vulnerable, especially during this time of high costs and inflation. Um, so also budgeting is really important. And for me, it's like trying to find ways to be frugal and yeah, that's kind of been my goal over the past year, especially as a newly single income household. And also, I would say I've had a conversation with my mom recently about money, and like she was telling me about her experiences like growing up in poverty, and like I see how she saves money, and I see how she's always like thrifting or like finding things at great prices. And but having a conversation with her helped me to understand um, why she thinks the way she does in terms of money, and like she's always been like budgeting and good with money. So I would say, like, if possible, like reflect on your family's history and experiences with money and the relationship that your family has had with money, because I think that oftentimes will inform us of how we perceive money and our relationship to money and how we spend money. Um, yeah, and it might offer some valuable, hints as to how we might be able to move forward in a more efficient way.
Love that.
Yeah.
Me too. I
Yeah,
love
it
that.
is really valuable to take. We talked about that when we had our pod with all of the ladies about what our family's relationship was with money and how that's impacted our relationship with money. And it is a really valuable reflection, and it can be not good or bad. I don't think that that's the right term. It can be very eye opening to see the habits that you've built based off of a relationship with money that's not yours, and how unique our relationship with money should truly be. But yeah, I love that answer, and I also agree that it comes back to you, Martina. I think that that is so important. I think that one, giving, but two, the act of giving is such a um it cool is the word. Like, it's a cool thing to like find the things that bring you joy and are important to you, and to give to those things, especially when you're in a place where you might not feel like you're stable, or with the act of giving is just, it makes you feel valuable, and it makes you feel like you're doing something even though you might be struggling. And I think 100% whatever that looks like to you, whether that's your time volunteering, or that's $1 at the checkout, or whatever that is, those things can kind of keep our faith in ourselves and others. And yeah, I love that example.
Me too. Thank you. This has been so wonderful. Thank you for sharing with us. You are such a special person, and this has been such a great chat. So thanks for being here with us.
Yeah. And thank you for being vulnerable with us. We talked about how hard that can be. And like, obviously you're in a change part of your life, and to take the step to be on here and be as honest and open as you have, I know that that's going to have such an impact on our listeners and those that are going through the same things, and how optimistic and beautiful your words have been are going to be super helpful for a lot of people.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Alicia.
Thanks for being here.
I'm pulling back the tears, but no, this has been, this has filled my soul, my cup. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And thank you both for having this space and creating this space so that people can connect and lean into, some of their own challenges with money and finances, but also in relation to their mental health as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Nice chatting with you.
Well, there it is. Talking about money and your mental health can be very uncomfortable, but just being reminded that you're not alone sure lightens the load, doesn't it? As they say, your mental health is your wealth. And it's a relief to know that there are people like Martina, a personal development counselor and instructor, to help with the mental health part. As for the money part, talk to an expert at credit unions. They are trained to help get you back on track and provide some much needed peace of mind. Your 2 Cents the podcast, brought to you by credit unions in partnership with Canadian Content Studios. Thanks for listening.